Sword Art Online isn't just a bad anime, it's a masterclass in wasted potential and one of the most frustratingly overrated shows in modern anime. What could have been a groundbreaking, genre-defining series instead collapsed under the weight of its own lazy writing, incoherent plot, and painfully shallow character development. The writing is full of inconsistencies and plot holes so obvious that it feels like no one bothered to edit the script after the first draft. It regularly abandons logic in favor of cheap drama and lazy narrative shortcuts. The story is a complete mess. It rushes through major plot points while dragging out filler that adds absolutely nothing. Arcs begin with promise and end in complete disappointment, often resolved without any real tension or a satisfying conclusion. Instead of building momentum, the series constantly resets itself, making it hard to stay invested. The characters are absurdly overpowered. Kirito, in particular, is the definition of a bland, overhyped protagonist who wins everything effortlessly. There's no real development, no growth, just the same recycled traits and one-dimensional relationships. The supporting cast is treated like background props, existing only to cheer him on or be rescued. Sword Art Online feels like someone had a decent idea for a setting, but no clue how to tell a coherent or compelling story. It leans on fan service and shallow emotional beats instead of meaningful character arcs or thoughtful world building. As a result, it comes off as juvenile and hollow, failing to deliver anything of real substance. Sword Art Online was never good, and it never will be good, no matter how many times it's rebooted, rebranded, or repackaged. Each attempt to revive the series only highlights how fundamentally broken it is at its core. The idea might sound appealing on paper, but the execution has always been painfully uninspired. It's genuinely baffling that this show has such a large fan base. The fact that so many people continue to praise Sword Art Online despite its lazy writing, empty characters, and incoherent plot lines is a mystery. You could put a room full of monkeys in front of a typewriter and eventually get something more compelling than the drivel this series continues to churn out. The game design in Sword Art Online is just as bad as its writing, if not worse. The fictional MMORPGs presented throughout the series are so poorly thought out that it's obvious the author either doesn't play MMOs or has no real understanding of how they work. If he does play them, it certainly doesn't show in the world building or the mechanics. The systems in the show are inconsistent and often make no sense even within their own logic. Core MMO elements like progression, balance, economy, and class dynamics are either glossed over or outright ignored. Players can supposedly clear entire floors solo, bosses are defeated with flashy nonsense instead of actual teamwork or strategy, and somehow every dungeon seems to revolve around Kirito being amazing, while everyone else just watches. It feels less like a genuine MMO world and more like a generic fantasy setting with a thin gaming veneer lazily slapped on. There's no sense of community, no meaningful guild structure, no player-driven content, no PvP that matters, and no economy that resembles anything remotely functional. It would be like someone writing a story about chess without knowing how the pieces move, just tossing around terms and hoping it sounds convincing. In the end, the games in Sword Art Online are just empty backdrops for overpowered wish fulfillment and melodrama. They completely fail to capture what makes real MMOs engaging, immersive, or believable. If you're looking for something that actually delivers, do yourself a favor and watch Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg. This is a masterclass in filmmaking, tense, smart, and brilliantly executed from start to finish. Unlike so many modern shows and movies that rely on flashy effects or hollow drama, Jaws builds real suspense through atmosphere, pacing, and character-driven storytelling. The tension doesn't come from cheap jump scares or over-the-top action, but from a slow, methodical build-up that keeps you on edge. The characters feel real, the dialogue is sharp, and the stakes are clear. Every scene serves a purpose, and the iconic score by John Williams adds an unforgettable layer of dread and anticipation. What makes Jaws truly stand out is how it understands that less is more. Spielberg knew that showing the shark too early would kill the suspense, so instead he lets your imagination do the work. If you want something that actually earns your attention and rewards it, this is the movie to watch. In honor of the 50th anniversary of the release of Jaws, it's the perfect time to take a look at why this film remains remains a masterpiece, and why. It's leagues above Sword Art Online, both in quality and storytelling. Jaws is a landmark in cinema history. It's a film that understands tension, pacing, and character development on a level that Sword Art Online has never come close to achieving. Where Jaws builds suspense through atmosphere and smart direction, Sword Art Online relies on shallow spectacle and overpowered protagonists. Where Jaws gives us layered, flawed, and compelling characters, Sword Art Online gives us flat, invincible avatars and recycled dialogue. Simply put, Jaws earns its place as a timeless classic.
A young woman is killed by a shark while skinny dipping near the New England tourist town of Amity Island. Police Chief Martin Brody wants to close the beaches, but Mayor Larry Vaughn overrules him, fearing that the loss of tourist revenue will cripple the town. Oceanographer Matt Hooper and grizzled ship captain Sam Quint offer to help Brody capture the killer beast, and the trio engage in an epic battle of man versus nature. If you were one of the characters in Jaws, what should you do? How can you survive and kill the shark? In this video, I'll break down the Jaws movie, explain all the mistakes made, see if I can make better decisions than the characters, and ultimately try to beat the killer shark. Afterwards, I'll also explain what's next for the Jaws franchise. Let's get started. The movie begins with an evening beach party at Amity Island. A young woman named Chrissy Watkins decides to go skinny dipping in the ocean. While treading in the water, she is attacked by an unseen force and pulled under. Even without the killer shark, this was not a good idea at all. We saw how the characters were drinking alcohol at the beach party, so Chrissy might have been drinking alcohol as well, and swimming while drunk can lead to drowning. Some studies have shown that alcohol is responsible for about 50 to 70% of all adult drowning deaths. The reason for this is because alcohol can impair your senses and alter your sense of distance. This will make you feel confused and disoriented in the water. Additionally, alcohol can lower your body temperature, so you're much more likely to suffer from hypothermia if the water is cold. Furthermore, it's also not very safe to swim in the ocean at night. It's dark, so it'll be hard to see what's going on. There weren't any people around either, so that means no lifeguards to rescue Chrissy. If this took place during the day and there were more people nearby, then they would have heard Chrissy screaming and they might have been able to rescue her before she was killed. Other ocean predators like stingrays are also more active during the night, so that's yet another reason why swimming at night is not a good decision. Lastly, it's illegal to skinny dip in most public places in the United States. Skinny dipping can be considered to be indecent exposure or public indecency. This could lead to being arrested and having to pay a large fine. Back to the main topic. Sharks aren't actually that big of a threat to humans. In fact, humans kill sharks way more often than sharks kill humans. Sharks rarely attack people if they aren't provoked or aggravated, and they don't typically eat humans. If you are attacked by a shark, punching it in the nose, eyes, or gills can cause it to flee and back off. There are only about 10 fatal shark attacks worldwide every year. The Florida Museum of Natural History has estimated that the odds of a fatal shark attack are about 1 in 3.7 million. Sharks don't have any limbs, so the reason why they might attack someone or something is because the only way they can explore an unknown object or organism is to bite it. Generally, the bites are just exploratory, and sharks will swim away after a single bite. Furthermore, sharks will normally only make one quick attack, then wait for the victim to die from shock or blood loss. Then they'll return to feed later. This allows people enough time to get out of the water and survive if they're attacked by a shark. The next morning, we see how the town is preparing for the upcoming Independence Day weekend, which is the most lucrative time of the year since the community heavily depends on summer tourism as a major source of income. Police Chief Martin Brody receives a call at home about Chrissy's disappearance. Brody goes to the beach with his deputy Jeff Hendricks to find out what happened, and they discover Chrissy's partial remains. Brody goes to the police station and he receives a call from the medical inspector. He informs Brody that Chrissy was the victim of a shark attack. Brody tries to close the beach until further investigation can be made, but Mayor Larry Vaughn opposes the decision since it could result in a huge loss of income for the town. Mayor Vaughn pressures Brody to change Chrissy's cause of death to mutilation by boat propeller instead of shark attack. It's pretty easy to tell the difference between a shark bite and a boat propeller mutilation, though. Shark bites would leave a half-circle pattern of punctures on the victim, and the wounds would be jagged, not smooth. Shark bites are also very deep. Wounds from a boat propeller would be straight and linear. Shutting down the beach will impact the town's revenue, but it's better to do that than risk permanently ruining the town's reputation forever. If other people get killed by the shark since the beach wasn't closed, then word will spread pretty fast, and that will prevent tourists from ever coming here again in the future. You've got to think about this in the long run, not to mention the lawsuits that the town will receive from the family members of those who were killed. The town is surely going to go bankrupt. The best choice is just close the beach until you're certain it's safe to swim. Beaches also have a few other ways to protect from shark attacks, so Brody could try some of these techniques. By far, the best method to do this is to install a shark barrier. It's a seabed to surface protective barrier that's designed to separate people from sharks and prevent the sharks from entering the swimming area. Shark nets can also reduce the risk of a shark attack. They are submerged nets placed around beaches to reduce shark attacks on swimmers. This isn't 100% effective though, so shark barriers are definitely the better option, and they're more environmentally friendly. An aggressive alternative is to use a drum line. They're unmanned aquatic traps that lure large sharks using baited hooks. Drum lines are usually meant to kill the sharks, but smart drum lines can move the sharks elsewhere. Some beaches might also have beach patrols and spotter aircraft to look out for sharks, but this doesn't work very well to reduce shark attacks. Lastly, using the essence of dead sharks can repel other sharks. A lot of tourists arrive on Amity Island. The beach is packed, and Brody is very concerned about more potential shark attacks. Why aren't there any lifeguards on this beach? Instead of being the only lookout, Brody could hire some lifeguards. A young boy named Alex Kintner goes out to swim, but he's killed by the shark. Everyone else is able to make it out of the water alive. With so many witnesses to Alex's death, it's impossible to deny the threat of a shark anymore, so Brody is allowed to close the beach. Alex's mother offers a $3,000 award to anyone who can catch and kill the shark that killed Alex. A town meeting is held to discuss the shark problem and what should be done. Brody announces that the police department is expanding its efforts to keep the beach safe, and they'll bring in an expert from the mainland to help. The townspeople are angry about the beach being closed, so Mayor Vaughn assures everyone that the beach will only be closed for 24 hours. Local fisherman Sam Quint is at the meeting, and he offers to kill the shark for $10,000. The townspeople don't immediately agree to Quint's proposition, but they'll consider it. Do the townspeople really need Quint though? They could just call the Coast Guard to deal with the problem. Later in the movie, Brody does try to call the Coast Guard for assistance when the characters are out at sea, but why not call them right now? The Coast Guard does help kill sharks. You don't even need to pay the Coast Guard anything since they're prohibited from charging you a fee. But if the townspeople don't want to call the Coast Guard, then hiring Quint is actually a good idea. They should pool their money together and pay Quint the $10,000 he asked. If the people wait too long, then I'm sure the beach closing will cost the town way more than $10,000 of lost revenue in total, so it's best to solve this shark problem as soon as possible. The $3,000 reward is made public, and lots of amateur shark hunters come to Amity Island to try and kill the shark. Two men attempt to lure the shark with a holiday pork roast, but they're unsuccessful, and one of them is nearly killed by the shark. This was certainly not a smart plan. Maybe don't try to kill a shark if you're not experienced. It's a lot harder than you think. We see that Amity Island Police Department has hired marine biologist Matt Hooper. He meets with Brody and is allowed to view Chrissy's remains. Hooper assures Brody that Chrissy was killed by a shark and did not die in a boating accident. They didn't need an expert for this. As mentioned before, it's not too difficult to tell the difference between a shark bite and a boat propeller accident. In the meantime, some fishermen have caught a large tiger shark. They think it's the one that killed Chrissy and Alex. However, Hooper examines the tiger shark's mouth and determines that it's not the shark they're looking for because the bite radius doesn't match the wounds on Chrissy's remains. Hooper suggests cutting the tiger shark's stomach open to see what it's recently eaten. Mayor Vaughn does not approve of the plan, so Brody and Hooper dissect the tiger shark on their own later. They don't find any any human remains inside, which confirms that this isn't the right shark, and the real killer shark is still out there. Hooper convinces Brody to go out on the water and continue their investigation. This is not a wise decision. First of all, Brody and Hooper were both drinking lots of wine earlier, so they're almost likely drunk and not able to think clearly. We see that Brody is still drinking alcohol on the boat. The characters should at least wait until they're sober. Second, it's nighttime, so it's going to be difficult to see in the dark, which is another reason why the characters should wait until later. Using sonar equipment, Brody and Hooper find the half-submerged boat of local fisherman Ben Gardner. Hooper decides to go down into the water to check the hull of the boat. Hooper should shave his facial hair first before going into the water. Diving with facial hair can be dangerous because your dive mask might not get securely sealed to your face and water could leak in. The seal around a diving mask is usually made out of silicone, and silicone seals much better to flat surfaces. Hooper discovers an enormous shark tooth. He pulls the shark tooth out, but Hooper sees Ben's corpse and drops the shark tooth before rushing to the surface. The next day, Brody and Hooper try to reason with Mayor Vaughn. They believe that a great white shark is behind the recent attacks, not a tiger shark. The mayor still insists that a shark isn't responsible, and Hooper doesn't have any evidence to back his statement up since he dropped the shark tooth earlier. But they still have the wrecked boat and Ben's corpse, right? Brody mentioned how they towed the boat in. They can show Ben's boat and corpse to the mayor, and it should be more than enough evidence to convince him of a shark attack. They don't even need the shark tooth. Hooper says that they have to either kill the shark or cut off its food supply, but Mayor Vaughn refuses to close the beach. Why is this mayor so stubborn and ignorant? Looks like the only choice is to kill the shark once and for all. Independence Day weekend finally arrives, and plenty of tourists come to Amity Island. People don't swim in the water though because they're scared of getting killed by the shark. Mayor Vaughn asks his friend to enter the water along with his family so they can put people's minds at ease. Other people also begin to relax and go into the water. A dorsal fin suddenly appears among the swimmers, and the crowd quickly scrambles out of the water. It's a false alarm though. It was just a prank by two kids using some snorkel gear and a cardboard fin. These two kids are even worse than the prank channels you see on YouTube. A prank should be lighthearted and funny. You shouldn't be scaring people half to death. Plus, these kids could have been shot and killed by the police officers on patrol, so they definitely shouldn't have done this prank. Meanwhile, a woman sees a huge shark going into the pond for real this time, but people assume that it's just another prank. Even if it is a prank, the police should still go to see what's going on in case it's a real shark. Brody goes to investigate since his son Michael is in the pond. A man in a rowboat approaches Michael and his friends, but the shark attacks and kills the man. The man should have tried fighting back. He could use the oars as weapons. Michael and his friends safely make it to shore, and Michael is taken to the hospital since he's in mild shock. Brody confronts Mayor Vaughn again and demands that they have to deal with the shark problem. He plans on hiring Quint to kill the shark. This time, Mayor Vaughn agrees to what Brody says since his kids were also at the beach and could have been killed by the shark. He gives Brody full permission to close the beach and hire Quint. Brody and Hooper visit Quint's house, and he says that he'll go alone. But Brody insists that he and Hooper will also come on the mission. There's a lot of tension between Quint and Hooper since they have very different attitudes and upbringings, but together the three characters embark on Quint's boat, the Orca. We saw earlier that Hooper has his own boat though. If Quint doesn't want Hooper to come along, then Hooper can just go on his own boat. His boat has sonar technology, so I'm sure they can find the shark much easier on Hooper's boat. Furthermore, Quint's boat is old and rusty, so going on Hooper's boat is a much better choice. And why is Brody coming along? He's not very knowledgeable about sharks, and he doesn't have any shark killing experience, so he's going to be a liability to the others. Brody is also afraid of the water, so going out on the ocean is not the best choice. The Amity Police Department should hire another skilled fisherman to take Brody's place. Out at sea, the characters try to kill the shark by using several different methods. First, they shoot the shark with harpoons tied to some plastic barrels that are supposed to slow it down. This doesn't work in the end because the shark is too strong, so Hooper enters the water in a shark-proof cage and intends to use a hypodermic spear to inject the shark with poison. The shark attacks the cage and and Hooper drops the spear. So this plan also isn't very successful. Shark skins are also hard to penetrate even with a spear. Sharks aren't covered in scales like most fish. They have tiny teeth called dermal denticles around their body. The denticles are extremely sharp, and rubbing against a shark can cut human flesh. Hooper is a shark expert, so he should know this. Hooper is able to safely escape and hide when the shark gets tangled in the cage. Water floods into the boat, and the orca slowly starts to sink. The shark breaks free and leaps onto the boat. It eats and kills Quint. Brody could have tried shooting the shark. He had a gun, so I don't know why he didn't do anything. The shark attacks again, and Brody shoves one of the scuba tanks into the shark's mouth. He then climbs onto the crow's nest of the boat and shoots the scuba tank with Quint's rifle. There's a huge explosion, and the shark is obliterated. This would not actually work in real life. There was a 2005 episode of Mythbusters that debunked this scene, as well as many other scenes in Jaws. They found that when the scuba tank was punctured by a bullet, it simply decompressed quickly and caused it to fly around like a compressed air rocket. The Mythbusters revisited this scene. They considered 3 issues raised by fans after the previously mentioned episode aired. First, it might be possible that the scuba tank would explode if it was grazed by the bullet. Second, different bullet calibers could make the scuba tank explode. Third, the shark can still get injured from the punctured scuba tank rocketing down its gullet. The Mythbusters studied preserved shark specimens to understand their anatomical structures. They then built a fake shark using cowhide leather to simulate the esophagus and stomach, layers of carpet strips for the muscles, and an outer layer of painted upholstery foam for the skin. Afterwards, the Mythbusters shot the scuba tank in the shark's mouth from the same distance as Brody in the Jaws movie. While the bullet punctured the scuba tank, the air released from it only managed to push the scuba tank a few feet down the gullet. The scuba tank didn't enter the esophagus. Grazing the scuba tank with various different types of bullets from the same exact gun that Brody used in the Jaws movie also did not make it explode. Using a bigger gun did not explode the scuba tank either. So this myth was re-busted. The Mythbusters were only able to make the scuba tank explode in the end by using actual explosives. What are some other ways that the characters could have defeated the shark in the Jaws movie? Well, I came up with a few methods. First, poisoning the chum. They had poison, so just mix it in with the chum and the shark would have died after eating it. Or strap some actual explosives to the chum and blow it up when the shark swallows it. Second, just call the Coast Guard so they can come kill the shark. We saw how Brody attempted to call the Coast Guard, but Quint destroyed the radio. This is a big mistake. Quint would probably still be alive in the end if the characters just called the Coast Guard and let him handle the shark problem. Quint's massive ego was his downfall. Sometimes you just have to swallow your pride. Third, instead of going out to sea in a boat, the characters could go via helicopter like what happened in the 2018 movie The Meg. Fire a tracker at the shark and bring a bunch of explosives with them. Then the characters can drop the explosives into the water when they see the shark and kill it. Hooper is rich, so he should be able to rent a helicopter and buy some explosives. Earlier in the movie, we also saw how Brody confiscated someone who had dynamite, so they could have used it later to kill the shark. The whole Chekhov's gun principle didn't come into play here. All these methods are way better than what the characters actually did in the movie. Additionally, the characters shouldn't be drinking and relaxing while out at sea. They need to stay focused. The shark could attack at any moment, so they can't let their guard down. Sharks are also attracted to light and sound, so they should turn the light off and keep quiet if they don't want the shark to come attack. Now is not the best time to be singing or talking. Finally, the movie ends with Hooper and Brody returning to Amity Island on the remaining barrels. And that's how to beat the killer shark in Jaws. Do you have any better strategies or methods? If so, let me know in the comments below. So, what's next for the Jaws franchise? After Jaws, there were 3 more official sequels. Jaws 2, which came out in 1978, Jaws 3D, which came out in 1983, and finally Jaws: The Revenge, which came out in 1987. Universal has approached Steven Spielberg for a Jaws reboot, but he firmly declined. In July 2018, Steven Spielberg mentioned that he was interested in doing a Jaws prequel movie about the 1945 sinking of the USS Indianapolis. The movie would feature a younger version of Robert Shaw's character Quint in a supporting capacity. Robert Shaw's grandson, Ferdy Claudia Shaw expressed interest in potentially playing a young Quint in the future in potentially playing a young Quint in the future if a Jaws prequel movie is ever made. What did you think of Jaws? I personally thought it was pretty great. The actors did a fantastic job and the action was really good. The movie is definitely a classic. Which movie should I do next? Leave a suggestion. Be sure to also check out some of the other how to beat videos on this channel. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.